if I can give anybody advice how to stand out in a marketplace, don't be afraid to be who you are and really think about what makes you special. What do you do that's really, really amazing? And then that might even be an opportunity that said, hey, I'm looking to start this new venture. I'm looking for $10,000 in capital. Where would you advise me to go and seek out that capital? You're not asking them directly, but you're asking their advice on how to go achieve it. Because here's what I know too. People with money know people with money.
All the time.
And I feel like so many times in my life, if I just start asking questions, I really want to go start this business, buy this investment property, promote this idea. And I do my research. How much is it going to take?
Right.
Is it going to take $1,000 or $100,000?
Right.
Do your homework first. What is it truly going to take?
Yeah.
Then you have to think about, okay, who am I? What do I personally need to infuse in this venture to get it up and running? Do you actually have to put your own cash in?
Right.
Maybe not. That's mindset work. That is hands down mindset work.
Welcome to Behind the Spotlight podcast, where your story matters. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, and I'm on a mission to empower and educate you towards your greatness. On this podcast, we go behind the scenes to shed light on the experiences and perspectives of individuals making waves in their fields. Also, on this show, my goal is to help you learn ways to turn your thoughts into action. You'll also learn from individuals who share personal experiences and actionable steps to create the life you desire. So get ready to get inspired and grow stronger. I encourage you to open up your heart and be ready to receive. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm feeling good.
I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks.
So we're doing this different setup today. I'm really excited because you're the first to experience this. It's why not just do something different, right? But this is a special episode because this is the time where all of the panelists who are going to be a part of the Rise and Thrive conference are sitting down with me, and people are getting to know who you are behind the scenes and beyond your title. So let's first just give everyone the foundation, who you are and what you do.
Who I am and what I do. I own a commercial real estate brokerage. And so the licensing for commercial real estate and residential real estate is exactly the same. So I get that question all the time, but no, I don't sell houses. I work with businesses to buy and lease office buildings, retail buildings, industrial spots, investment property, multifamily. So I do a lot of cool things. And unfortunately, a lot of the buildings that I work in aren't very sexy. I mean, sometimes they're just kind of gross, warehouses, but it's a wonderful way to work with businesses.
Awesome.
Most of my clients I would consider small businesses, and I define that not necessarily in a financial way, because some of them might be brand new startups that have never done a business venture ever in their life, all the way to companies that maybe have over $1 billion in assets, but they're small because of their size. So maybe they employ 200 employees or less, and they're nimble and they're looking at growth strategies. And my contact is typically the owner or the CEO. So what I love about what I do, it's not just real estate. It's working with companies and individuals to say, okay, real estate is one leg of the chair per se, but how can I help you plug into, how do you do hiring practices and recruitment, and what is your marketing strategy, and what does your footprint need to be from a physical state of a business? So that's what I do, and I've been in this business for about 11 years.
That's beautiful. That's only one of the things you do, because you're also a podcast host and author.
Yes.
You have 2 books, which is beautiful. I'm shout out to you. How do you do it, right? But I love your podcast. It's called the Small Business Mindset podcast. And you work with a lot of, you mentioned entrepreneurs and people who are kind of in that startup phase. And what I love about one of your books is that it says you take people from idea to business, basically getting them to that launch phase.
Right.
Tell me what got you into that space.
Yeah. I would say I've always had this passion for owning my own business. And that was one of the reasons 11 years ago I took the leap and got into commercial real estate. Prior to that, I was in banking. So I did business development for a large credit union that it was in multi-states. Had a great career. But I knew, like a lot of us, there was more for me out there. I just didn't know what it was just yet.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of owning a business, and I didn't even know what kind of business I wanted to own. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It's I don't want to own a bank. I knew that. And I didn't necessarily think real estate was my lane.
Yeah.
It was just an opportunity was presented to me. And as I took a look at it, I thought, okay, this has some components where I can own and manage it. And so I actually worked for a larger brokerage for a number of years and launched my own company 3 years ago. But what I did do, I knew I needed to learn the basics of how does this work?
Right.
How do I put together the plan? Not only financially, but strategically. What is my involvement? What is my skill sets? And it got me a deep dive into doing that.
Yeah.
And so I know I always encourage my clients and hopefully all your listeners within every community in the United States,
Yes.
there is an entity called the Small Business Development Center, and it is funded by the federal government. There are free services out there. And
Yes.
I would say I had them on speed dial for years because I needed to know, okay, how do I put together that business plan? How do I
Yes.
run financial analysis? And what I tell a lot of my clients and also people that, how did you do this? I'm like, well, there's a lot of resources available for you.
Yeah.
Now we have this wonderful thing called the internet
Right.
that helps you do it faster.
Right.
But I think sometimes even though if somebody gives you an outline or gives you like, here are the steps,
Right.
sometimes that's not as relatable as just having the conversation with somebody that might look a little more like you or have gone down a path that is similar to what you're thinking and be like, but how did you do it? How did you then implement this? I think another thing that I've always loved about myself, and probably you're the same way,
Yes.
I love a challenge. And sometimes I'm like, so that's honestly why I became an author. I'm like, okay, I had a little blog. I was writing. I don't love to write, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
Or when I write, it's more journalistic. It's like short, sweet, to the point, you know, but I love to read novels and
Right.
I didn't write a novel. I wrote a self-help book.
Yeah.
But it was more about like, I want to see what it takes to do it. I wanted to challenge myself. I'm like, what does it truly take to become a published author?
Right.
And that process took me over a year to write the book. And my first book was it's 100 pages. It's not huge.
Yeah.
But then it was like, okay, so now I have this thing. How do you get it published? And that took another year to figure that out. And I ended up self-publishing. So it's just, for me in life, what brings me the most joy is that challenge of like, okay, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to take it a little further and then I'm going to fail. And then I'm going to pivot over here. And this really sucked. But
you're
going to
still
ask a lot
gonna
of
do
questions.
it.
You're
Yeah.
still going to do it, you know? And I think if you are the type of person willing to put yourself in that challenge mindset,
Yes.
and you keep going and keep going and keep going when the going gets tough, you can accomplish anything. Regardless of your education level, regardless of your skill set.
Yes.
I always tell my staff especially, but I'm like, I can teach anybody a skill.
Yeah.
And I can learn any skill. What I can't teach you is drive and motivation. That has to come from inside you. And motivation is different for everybody. So finding that spark, I think, is so important, especially for small business owners to figure out the why and why are they doing what they're doing.
Can I just say that's honestly why I've been so attracted to you? Like the moment I met you, I can feel your energetic drive and like your go-getter like energy. I'm just like, where have you been? Every time I say this, every time I see you, I'm like, where have you been my entire life? Because I need more people like you around me. And I think it's exactly that. Like your passion is contagious and it's a beautiful thing because it's interesting because when I read your title and it's like, okay, commercial real estate, but then you also do this like small business development thing over here. I'm like, how do they like
how
coincide?
do they all come together?
Right?
I know.
But then they really do in essence. And so what I love the most too about your book and your podcast is you mentioned it before about there's gaps that a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. And you kind of took your personal story and said, I have this problem. I'm sure many people have this problem. So how do I solve it? And I kind of was in a similar situation with kind of like my podcast and the event was like, there's this gap that women have. How do we fill it? So as you're talking to entrepreneurs about the challenges that they face, what's like the biggest gap you see as they're starting their business?
Fear. Number one, fear. They might have a great idea. And I use on my podcast a lot, you're going to laugh at me, but I think it's very relatable. So let's say you make amazing donuts in your kitchen. And you make them for friends and family, and people say, oh, I'll buy some, host a party, and you make them fancy with like Oreo cookies on the top or not, whatever. And they're amazing donuts. You're like, okay, I think I can open up a business and actually go into business. I'm going to be Danielle's Donuts, right? And you're like, yay. And so a lot of times the first thing people will do, they'll call me because they want to visualize the shop, the donut shop. And they visualize it's going to be in Main Street downtown. And it's going to be this cute little like brick wall facade and the little, bell on the door. I mean, they have it in their head.
Yeah.
And that's where they start. Because that's where creative visionaries start. They want to see themselves in this space. And then we meet. And then I start asking questions. Okay, tell me more about this. A lot of times they haven't done the business plan and they haven't really thought through all the specifics, inventory, staffing, taxes, insurance, all those things. And I'm like, okay, I am so excited for you because I mean, you are probably the best donut maker on the planet.
Yeah.
But one thing you're probably not great at is running the business side. And the last thing I want to do for anybody is you have a great idea and you get going and then you fail immediately because you didn't do that work ahead of time.
That's true.
And so sometimes I get to burst their bubble a little bit and take a step back. At the same time, I hear people, they're so afraid of doing it wrong that they don't do anything at all.
Yes.
They sit on this idea.
Yes.
And if I can give anyone advice, I'm sure you've been through this too. It's like, if you have a good idea and you're passionate enough about it and you're like, I'm going to keep asking questions and it might take longer than expected and it might take more money than expected and I might have to change my mind. But overcoming those fear boundaries for people sometimes is debilitating. And it's hard to get past that until they, for whatever reason, they do it. Yeah. So I think getting over the fear for people, the simplest thing is to literally just do something.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Just do something.
Yes.
Take a step in the right direction. It's almost like, taking the baby bird and like throwing it out of the nest or going into the deep end of the pool. I'm like, you have to learn to swim instantaneously or fly on the way down. And you might crash and burn, but that's part of the process. I've crashed and burned a lot over my life, in different ways.
I love this.
But it's gosh, I've learned a lot and I've gotten some tough, hard knocks and you learn how to do it better and faster and easier the second and third time.
Yeah.
So that's, if I can encourage people, what is their biggest challenge to entrepreneur? Just go fly, just jump out of the nest, do it.
That's so good. Okay. So someone might rebuttal and say, how can I stand out in this market that is so like full of the same thing? It's oversaturated. Everyone wants to be a coach. Everyone wants to launch a course. Everyone wants to open a donut shop. I mean, so what do you tell startups or new entrepreneurs? Because I know you do also some mentoring. What do you tell them to stand out in the market?
First and foremost, and this is the hardest thing sometimes for people to grasp, don't be afraid to be yourself. Don't be afraid to be completely vulnerable. And what I mean by that is that don't go on social media and tell everyone your problems and complain and whine and cry. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
But be unapologetically you in a kind and sincere and engaging way. Because what I've realized is that if you are you and you're like, you know what, I do this really, really well.
Right.
So I'm going to point the finger back at me for a second. In the commercial real estate world, I work in a smaller market. I'm headquartered in Lawrence, but I work across the state of Kansas. Most of our communities are under 1 million people.
Yeah.
Most of our communities are under 100,000 people or closer to 10,000 people. So smaller markets. I don't work in San Francisco or New York and things like that. Right. I've chosen that path because I feel like I can have greater impact and I can have that frontline impact with business owners.
Yeah.
Now, conversely, I have plenty of colleagues that work in Kansas City, but to work in a market of that size, and Kansas City is a market of 2 or 3 million people, you have to niche yourself. Otherwise, you won't get any business. I mean, you have to really find your niche.
Yeah.
And people over the years have said, Kirsten, you really need a niche. You really need to dial down. I'm like, okay, but I can't just do only office properties and survive and make a living in a smaller market.
Right.
So I've had to adjust my thinking and adjust how I pitch myself to people thinking, okay, so my niche is I'm a small business, smaller market specialist, but I do everything across the board.
Right.
And I'm a business owner myself. So I bring in the lens of I'm a female business owner. Of a certain age, with a certain background. And I am somebody, what sets myself apart is I am willing to sit down with you. I'm not just going to meet with you on the real estate. I'm going to meet with you on everything about your business. And I'm going to bring to you my personal board of directors, my team of CPAs and attorneys and bankers and everyone that is at the top of their game in their industry that can serve you. And I'm going to serve it up to you on a silver platter.
That's so good.
And I'm going to show you the way. And so if I think about my competition just in my marketplace, A lot of my competitors don't take the time to do that.
Right.
Because, they're transactional. I mean, that's what we are. We're salespeople. And so if I can give anybody advice how to stand out in a marketplace, don't be afraid to be who you are and really think about what makes you special. What do you do that's really, really amazing? You might make amazing donuts, but you might make them in a way that has a little difference to them.
Right.
Maybe you locally source all of your product. Maybe you have somebody, I'm going to use one of my clients as an example. A new coffee shop is getting ready to open in our community. And the idea for the coffee shop came from his daughter, who's 10 years old.
Wow.
And their family is Congolese. So they're from the Congo and they immigrated here.
Yeah.
And so they still have connections over in Africa. She found a local coffee manufacturer that grows coffee beans. And she found, and then through the help with her dad, they found a roaster in a different area. And then she found a way to market this wholesale online. And she's been going at 10 years old because she's like, I love my home country and I love our culture and I love the work that these people do. And I want to find a way to bring that and share that with people. So she just got really resourceful. I think her dad's an entrepreneur too. So I think that helps.
That's beautiful.
But I'm thinking, gosh, there's a coffee shop on every corner, but there's not a Congolese coffee shop on every corner. And I'm so excited when they're getting ready to open. I'm like,
that's so good.
Tell me about what makes us different. And if you could hear them talk about the flavor and the smoothness and how it's sourced and what goes into it, I'm like, where do I buy a cup? And I'll pay $20 for it. I don't care.
Right.
It's like, but just that passion, they are unauthentically themselves.
So good.
And telling me about how this came to be. And it just warms your heart, So just be authentic and find out why you're different.
Right.
Why you're different.
I have to second that. I always say authenticity is your superpower, because if you can be authentic in your real self, honey, you are scaling on a whole other level, because there's so many people duplicating and trying to be someone that they're not.
Yep.
Right. And so one of the things that I love about this platform is making sure we are vulnerable and transparent and also educational. And so as you're talking about how you offer all of these variations to your client, not just commercial real estate, but you have all of these different sectors and avenues that you're like, we're going to help you holistically, which I love. Speak on, now let's transition, because you mentioned that keyword that a lot of people can't run from, money, when it comes to opening a business, right?
Yeah.
And, one of the things too that I've been trying to figure out as a startup entrepreneur is getting more funding.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people ask you, Kirsten, how do I launch on a bigger scale? How can I grow when I don't have the funding to do it, right? And so what financial strategies would you recommend for startups or any entrepreneur that's looking to grow?
Right. About, 15 years ago, I had this idea. I'm like, what does it take to start a charitable fund? And I'm like, and I always, my husband and I occasionally have these conversations, like when, you're laying in bed at night, you're like, okay, if we won the lottery tomorrow, what would we do? Or, if money wasn't an issue, how would we live our life? How would we function? And one of the passions that we've always thought, I'm like, if I had literally that much money, I would love to start a foundation of sorts, a charitable foundation where we had a mission and we thought about what's really important to us and how we would gift dollars to area charities and organizations to build people up and do that good work. Because at the end of the day, sometimes it's all about the money. It is.
Yeah.
If you think about your favorite nonprofit, I'm sure they love their volunteers and they love their in-kind donations, but bottom line, they need cash to keep the doors open. And that's very important. Conversely, if you're a business owner, sometimes you just need cash, right? And so when I asked that question 15 years ago, okay, I want to start a charitable fund, but I don't have $1 million. And I started asking questions like, how much does it take to start a fund within our local community organization?
Right.
Well, I found out it was only $10,000. I didn't have $10,000. But as I started talking to more people and kind of sharing what I was thinking, gosh, that money just kind of appeared. It just appeared. So from a business perspective, this is the other part about also being authentic. I am a firm believer in the universe or God or your higher power and the power of connection and the power of sharing your story. And I feel like so many times in my life, if I just start asking questions and saying, I really want to do this. I really want to go start this business, buy this investment property, promote this idea. And I do my research. How much is it going to take?
Right.
Is it going to take $1,000 or $100,000?
Right.
Do your homework first. What is it truly going to take?
Yeah.
Then you have to think about, okay, who am I? What do I personally need to infuse in this venture to get it up and running? Do you actually have to put your own cash in?
Right.
Maybe not. For example, the state of Kansas, and I know you know a young lady that works for the state of Kansas, the Department of Commerce and Network Kansas.
Yeah.
What an amazing program.
Yeah.
And I think we have a lot of tools, believe it or not, even within our state, that offers amazing resources to small business owners, whether you're male, female, black, white, whatever.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing programs. And I feel like they've been there for a while, but just trying to understand and tap into them. So that is a great resource to get capital. It might not be free capital. It might not be a grant. It might be a loan. But and that's where I love to come in. I'm like, okay, let me help you navigate this system.
Yeah.
Because there's capital. At the same time, there might be capital right next door in your neighborhood, in your community. If you start asking questions and find out, okay, how do I need to get into that?
Yeah.
I think we were talking a little earlier before we started. And I've realized over the course of my career is that people in the Midwest hide their wealth. There's a lot of wealthy people.
Definitely.
All over the place.
Yes.
And how do you tap into that? And I think it's being authentic, asking questions. And some people might think, oh gosh, I can't go ask somebody for money. I can't go ask that millionaire for money, that billionaire for money. Well, no, I'm not asking you to do that.
Right.
What I'm asking you to do is make a connection and start sharing your story and asking them for their story.
Yes.
And I bet you'll find some commonalities, believe it or not, in the most obscure ways.
Yeah.
And you're building relationships and you're building foundations with people.
Yeah.
And then over time, and that over time might be 6 months or it might be a couple years.
Right.
But you are building a network with the soul, and you can't go into it thinking, I only want to be friends with that person because I want their money.
Exactly.
No, that's not going to work. That is inauthentic.
You have to really build a connection.
You really have to build a connection.
Build a relationship. Yes.
And it might be that you're looking at this person, you're like, they're interesting. They've done something that's pretty powerful. Maybe I can approach them and say, can I have lunch or coffee with you? Can I hear your story? I want to hear your origin story. And I just say, that's what gets my juices going. I mean, I love people's origin story because a lot of times you start talking to someone, you're like, oh my gosh, we grew up in the same town. 500 miles from here. We had a similar upbringing. We had a similar passion. These things, we had similar paths. So what happened there?
Exactly.
And then you're finding common ground. And then I always encourage people to ask somebody else, when you want something from somebody else eventually, offer something to them. How can I help you?
Don't just take. Yeah.
Can I be a connector? Can I help connect you to somebody? Can I be a volunteer? Can I bring you some value? Can I offer some different perspective? Maybe you're younger than they are. Perspective on, advice or, just what's going on. Ask them for advice. Ask them to be a mentor for you. I mean, I would say anyone that's established, that's well-to-do, loves to give advice, loves it. And if you show genuine interest and show that collaboration, doors start opening for you. And then that might even be an opportunity that said, hey, I'm looking to start this new venture. I'm looking for $10,000 in capital. Where would you advise me to go and seek out that capital? You're not asking them directly, but you're asking their advice on how to go achieve it. Because here's what I know too. People with money know people with money.
All the time.
And if you approach it in a way where you're like, I'm not making an ask, I'm looking to use you as a resource. How can we be resourceful to each other and open doors? There it is. There it is. And that's where the universe comes in. So, I mean, I hope I kind of take you down a path of there is so much money available to everyone. You just have to ask. But you can't just come out and ask for it. You have to set it up, be genuine, and be interesting. And don't feel like I'm getting ready to do another podcast titled "When I Feel Like the Dumbest Person in the Room," because I think that's when. We talked about fear a little earlier. I think a lot of people are intimidated by people with money or people that are successful. They're like, "How do I possibly get a seat at the table? How do I get in the room?" And here's my advice: ask the dumb question. Just ask the dumb question. Because I guarantee you, 99% of the people will be like, oh, thank goodness she asked that question. I was thinking that too, but I didn't want to sound like I was dumb. Ask the question. And they're like, oh, wow, she's brave. She's going to ask the question, Isn't that cool?
Or thank you.
Yeah. Like I was wondering that too. So, yep.
So good.
I'm really excited to share something really special happening at the 2024 Rise and Thrive Conference. We're adding a charitable component to the empowering experience this year called the Empower the Period Donation Drive. It's an opportunity for all of us to help young ladies with their menstrual cycle by providing them with these essential items that they need. This component of the conference is a collaborative effort with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Topeka to support their teen center. Now, as we come together to celebrate and support women at the conference, we also want to shine a light on an important issue: period poverty. It's a challenge that many women face around the world and right here in our own community. So by joining us in this drive, you can make a real difference with us. For more information and ways to donate, you can simply donate online or bring your products to the event on August 16th and 17th. For more information on how to help this cause, head over to our website at daniellejmartin.com/empower the period. That's daniellejmartin.com/empower the period. Now let's empower women together.
Okay, so everything you just said, the first thing that came to mind was you do not find what you're not looking for, right?
Yes.
And so my partner tells me all the time that like everything you desire is all around you. And so I remember like when I was transitioning, trying to scale my podcast, I wanted it to look a certain way.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm like, but I want it to look like this and this, and I can't because of X, Y, and Z. I didn't have like the lights or the aesthetics, like all of these things. And he's like, create it. Like you can create it. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if as entrepreneurs, we know like we can create what we are seeking, or we can go ask questions to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so I love like, honestly, everything you just said was so valuable. And so I'm just thinking to myself, like, yes, firm believer of you have to just ask questions and open your mouth, like just talk to people.
Yep.
Like you never know who is who. And I'm also learning recently, like you can't underestimate people. Just because someone doesn't look flashy or look like they have money, that's probably the person you need to talk to. That doesn't look like they're flashy.
That's hanging the wall and looking awkward.
Yes.
They probably just inherited $1 billion state. I don't know.
I mean, literally like so much value, right?
Yes.
So just like start asking questions.
Start asking questions. I'm glad you brought something up about being perfect and having it look a certain way.
Yes.
I've had to learn this hard truth over the years too. And this is a failure. Mm-hmm. It's like, I was so worried about, I don't have it 100% right. I don't have the right outfit, the right look, the right portfolio, whatever it is, the lighting, all that stuff, the right recording software.
Yeah.
And what I realized is like, that's going to keep me from taking action. Mm-hmm. And if you just take action, and I kind of use this old adage, I'm like, if you're 70% sure, in fact, if you're 51% sure, go for it. And over time, you will learn to refine that along the way. And if you think about any of your favorite podcast hosts that you listen to for years, go back to those first few podcasts. Mm-hmm. They're awful. I mean, they're probably great because you love them and they've grown. But they're probably, not edited great and the sound quality is not awesome. And they might be like, their flow isn't great. Right. And it's like, we've all been there.
Yes.
We've all been there. Yeah. I did a podcast interview, within the last year, and the guy I had on, and it's somebody I've known for a while, and he has a podcast too. He's like, well, your audio quality wasn't that great. I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, I did it. Who cares?
I don't care.
I know so many people like recording in their basement right now.
Yeah.
But
I record in my closet sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you look. It's just about starting.
Yep.
And so I recently definitely had to overcome that. And also understanding too, that like you can create whatever it is that you desire. Like even right now, I'm like, okay, I want to, renovate the podcast space. I want to, make it look different. So we're going to record somewhere else, but we're still going to make it look nice and fancy. And here we go.
Here we go. Yeah.
And we're here.
Yeah.
So, I love that reminder, understanding that like just start and do it ugly.
Just start doing ugly.
So,
because I'm also, one of the skill sets I think you can teach yourself is kind of like, put your parachute on the way down. Mm-hmm. And if you are somebody that's the fear base, it's like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. We're smart people.
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
If you
We can figure
woke
it
up
out.
in the morning and got dressed and brushed your teeth, you can figure out anything. Seriously. And I know one exercise my husband and I have done with our kids before is they're growing up, like we'll be driving around a new area and we're like, okay. And we stop the car at a stoplight. We're like, do you know how to get home from here?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, we've never dropped them off on the corner and let them do it, but it's just stretching yourself in those skills where if you are thrown into an interview,
right,
you're thrown into an opportunity, could you hold your own? Could you ad lib? Could you flow? Could you be comfortable in that environment?
Yeah.
And my advice to you, if you're in that environment and you have these like, holy shit moments, like, I don't deserve to be here, or I don't know what I'm going to say, start asking questions. Start asking, first of all, slow down.
Yeah.
I know I'm a fast talker.
Yeah. Same.
And over time, I've really had to talk like I'm talking to a toddler and enunciate and just be really, take deep breaths and just slow everything down. And if you remember those skills, like, okay, if somebody fires a question at you and you're like a deer in the headlights and you're like, okay, deep breath, count to 5, and 5 sounds like an eternity. You're there's silence and no one's saying anything. And oh my God, what are they going to think of me? Honestly, they're not going to think anything. They think you're processing. And then you're like, okay, great question. Here's my answer.
Right.
Or I'm going to follow up with another question, and get really comfortable in those roles. I think that exercise alone, throw yourself into situations where you don't know a whole lot about the subject matter, just start asking questions and see how it goes.
I feel like you just listed off the way on how to practice, right?
Yeah.
And so, Michael and I talk about all the time. It's like, how do we as leaders in the community, or how do you in your profession, how do you practice becoming better?
Yeah.
Right? Because I think sometimes we don't make time for that. We make time for working on the business or completing our to-do list. Right. But when is the last time you have put time away to practice how to be a better leader, how to be a better CEO, how to be a better business owner? What would you say, or what advice would you give on how to practice?
Yeah. I have been a member of multiple mastermind groups over the course of my career. And first it started, I was realizing, I'm a member of your local chamber of commerce and different networking groups, and those are fine. Yeah. Those are fine. Sometimes if you truly want to be a leader, whether you're a team leader or a department leader or you're a business owner, you need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, but maybe in different industries, because you're never going to find, okay, they do it exactly how I do it, and we're going to do it in parallel paths. You don't want that. Yeah. You want differentiation of thought. So I think there's a lot of power in putting together, and I'm going to call it a mastermind group, but it could be 4 people. And many times I'll be the one starting the group, because I'm like, okay, I need to create my personal board of directors. Right. And I have several masterminds. We're all executive women, and we're similar aged. We're moms. We have several things in common. We're all in different industries, and we have built over time a level of trust with each other. So when we meet, and we try to get together once a month or once every other month for a long lunch. Yeah. And we kind of have this rule, okay, whatever is said in the room is completely private. So you can be real and honest and vulnerable with each other and say, here's where I'm challenged. Yeah. Here's the problem I'm trying to solve. I'm hitting a wall. Right. Or something came at me that totally derailed me. And I don't know what to do, and how do I'm seeking this higher level position or this better client. How do I get in front of them? Yes. And I guarantee you, if you select the right people that are smarter than you in different areas, they're going to give you the best advice, because they're going to come at it from a totally different angle than you could have thought of on your own, and vice versa. And so those environments for me have allowed me to stretch my skills when, I've had several friends over the years that are powerful women and doing some amazing things and killing it. And they've come to me at different times in their lives where they are facing a challenge and they don't see their worth, but I do. Yeah. And I'm like, do you realize that here's that spark, there it is. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's like you kind of give them a little push. Yeah. And then they do it and they go back to you. I also encourage you, as you're thinking about different people to surround you with, also be mindful of, don't surround you with people that look just like you. Yes. Surround yourself with people that are younger, older, different industries, men and women treat business very differently. Their objectives are different, even if maybe you're the same age and you're a parent and you're a spouse and you're a homeowner. I mean, everything else looks the same. You're the same political affiliation. I don't know. But those are things to think about too. Purposely insert people into your life that are powerful and successful. But have nothing to do with you. And I want them to encourage different ideas of thought. And I also feel a fun challenge for me is that I love having conversations with people that maybe we are very different politically. And I want to understand them. I'm like, okay, from the outside, you look like me. You know, I mean, we check the box in all these areas, but politically we couldn't be more different. I'm like, help me understand that perspective. And I also have this mission in my life. I feel like having one-on-one conversations with people changes the world.
Definitely.
If you're willing to sit down and have a face-to-face conversation with somebody, more than likely you're going to be safe. Because it's just the two of you. And you're probably not going to say something that's going to offend them because they're going to leave. So don't do that. But you're going to seek questions to understand because you want to engage them and you want to continue to talk with them and learn from them. And I bet you let's say you have a 10-minute conversation with somebody, I bet you'll learn so much about them.
Oh my gosh.
And they're going to learn so much about you. And the hope is that you'll both walk away going, that's really cool. Okay. Tell me more. And I bet you'll encounter more people like them that then you can relate that experience with that helps you grow. That's leadership.
It's all about being curious.
Right.
And I feel like that's where I felt like our connection was drawn because you were asking really good questions. I was curious about you. You were curious about me. And the way you think, I'm just so fascinated. And it's very similar to how I think by surrounding myself with people that are more successful, because I want to know how to get into that room, how to get to that level. And so I agree with everything you mentioned. And more than anything, being curious and not being afraid to ask that question. But some people, you went back and you kind of hit on it, being worthy. Some people don't feel worthy enough.
They do not.
To ask the question. They're not confident or worthy enough to feel like, how can I get into that room? So you talk about having these masterminds, which I love, right? And I'm like, I want to build that. I want to be around more women that are doing those things, right? That was the first thing I said to you. And the first thing that the challenge I came up with when I first moved to Topeka was not finding those people, right? I'm like, I know they're here.
It's like they're standing on the corner saying, pick me.
Exactly. I'm like, where are they?
Oh, there you are.
It took me like really years. Like I've been here for 5 years. So it took me 5 years to find. And I'm slowly like, they're popping out somewhere, right? They're slowly coming. And some of them are coming to this conference and I'm super excited. But you kept asking and asking. And you're curious. Definitely. So what advice would you give to women or anyone who is trying to find that group, trying to either create that group, but they don't know how to get into the room. They don't know how to get into that group because maybe they feel like I'm not making enough money yet. Or
I don't deserve to be there.
Exactly. I don't deserve to be there.
That's mindset work. That is hands down mindset work.
Okay.
I think if all of us think about our origin story, how we grew up, how we were raised, how our parents treated us, how we felt. Did you feel worthy when you were 14, 16, 12? Did you? I bet a lot of us can say, no, I didn't. I didn't feel worthy. It took me a lot of years and a lot of time doing a lot of work on myself to feel worthy. And my advice to give, especially women, because I think, even though generationally we've changed a lot and women empowerment is front and center nowadays, I still think as a country, we are in this mindset of, as a female, if you are married and you are a mother, you automatically get put in that position of you're the mother, you're the food preparer, you're the grocery shopper, right? There's a stigma. When you have a baby, you're the one that gets to stay home. You're not worthy enough to put your career first. And I think, some people get stuck in that and they never get out of that. But what I can tell you is that anyone can get out of that mindset if you want it bad enough. And it's a lot of surrounding yourself with people that have value, that aren't intimidated to share with you their success. I think that's the first rule. If you're willing to be authentic and vulnerable, not in a whiny way. Don't complain about your past. Tell your story.
Exactly.
But say, I'm here to overcome that. And I'm looking for ways to do that. And then share something that you've learned. I think what I found when I approach other women, and this happens a lot too with women, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to connect with you. You're so amazing. And I'm so admiring you. How did you do that? And they put a wall up. I'm not going to tell you. We're like, well, that's not the person you want to be with. I'm an open book. I'm like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I did it. I'm going to give you the outline, the cliff notes, I'm going to say,
number,
here it is. I can't do the work for you, but I'm going to show you exactly the steps to do it. That's leadership too. And I want to do that for other women because I had women in my life that did it for me. And I had to find them. It took a while, but you find those people, latch onto them. They're great people and give back to them too. But I also am a firm believer, if you think about your childhood, I mean, there's a lot of us that had shitty childhoods, awful childhoods. And it could have been at the hands of a parent that was abusive or somebody's an alcoholic or you didn't have anything, right? That could be a lot of our stories. And what I'm here to tell you is that now in your adulthood, you get to make different choices. You get to rewrite your past. You get to react differently. How are you moving forward? You get to create your dialogue. Even if you're somebody that messed up in the past, you made mistakes. Maybe you got arrested. Maybe you were into drugs. I don't know. Is that your reality now? If it's not, you change your story. And it starts one step at a time. But in order for you to change your story, you have to be comfortable telling yourself, this is not me. I am not that person. I am not that person that did that and went through that and was humiliated or put down by that. I'm going to stand in my truth now. Now you realize what your triggers are. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm subject to that thing again. Okay. Stand in your truth. But also be willing to take the step forward because no one's going to do the work for you. If you start taking steps forward and proving your worth to yourself, you'll prove your worth to other people. And they'll be like, oh, wait a minute. She's been talking about writing that book, starting that blog, recording on YouTube.
Wow.
She just started doing it. And here's the key to all that is consistency. So what I see people do, they talk a good game. I'm going to write this book. I have this great idea. I'm like, I'm so excited for you. How can I help? Right? Like, oh yeah. I'm like, well, tell me, do you want me to read it? Do you want me to read a first draft or I have ideas? And a lot of times they're like, no, it's just still an idea. And they just don't launch it. I'm like, start writing it, start recording. Because the second you do that and you do it consistently every week, every day, whatever. When I started my podcast, I had these high hopes that I'm like, I'm going to record a podcast and every single week I'm going to have an episode come out. And I did it for a few weeks. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really hard. It's a lot. Okay. And then I totally pulled back and I didn't do anything for months. And I'm like, okay, what am I wanting to do? Because what will make you stand out more than anything is if you're willing to put the work in, you're willing to do it consistently. It's kind of like getting into shape or having a healthy eating habit. You can't eat healthy foods one day a week and expect to look amazing, expect to look toned and have good energy. Do it every single day. It's a discipline. And if you're willing to buy into that discipline, oh my gosh, you just catapulted yourself above most people out there. Because luck doesn't come to people naturally. Luck comes to people that are prepared and are disciplined to take on, and it doesn't look like luck anymore. It's an opportunity.
Honey, you just said so much. I'm just receiving over here, literally. But okay, one of the things too that I really want to hit on, especially at the conference, I don't want to dive into it here, but I want us to go into the childhood part of things.
Sure.
And how, because you kept saying that, and what came up for me was money and scarcity mindset. And so how all of that connects and leads to the decisions I'm making now. And it made me think and wonder, how many entrepreneurs are fearful of money or even asking for money or
fearful of making too much money. What a weird concept is that? Right. It's true. That's the reality.
But it starts from childhood.
Totally
and
does.
so I would love for us to go into that, especially at the conference. So if you have not bought your ticket, definitely get one. But also too, I want to dive into, you talked about having an idea and not really knowing fully how to launch it. And so we're going to dive into that there. But as we come to a close, I want you to talk to us about why you decided to accept this position. First of all, thank you so much for saying yes to being a speaker at the event. What does this mean to you? And what do you hope people take away?
I think if you have an opportunity to teach somebody something, whatever it is, whether you're sharing how you got to where you are or a nugget of information you wish everyone were to know, to me, that helps me grow. If I can share my story, if I can engage with other people, I love getting feedback. And I love saying, either getting, whether I'm telling a story and I'm getting nods and smiles or I'm getting, confused looks, I'm like, that tells me something. That's a message back to me. Yeah. I always want to be growing. I never want to be in an environment where I'm stagnant, even if I'm doing well. And I do well. Yeah. I've built a great company. I do well. Yeah. I should be very thankful for that. But I also am not somebody that sits still. I feel like there's more to me to give, and I'm not done giving yet. I have a lot of life to live in front of me. And what brings me the most joy is when I see somebody else get inspired by something I did or said or pointed them in the right direction, and I get to celebrate their success. So to me, that's what life's all about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Kirsten Flory, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
You're
such a firecracker. And I'm like, hopefully, I would have to go back and literally write down so much. You made it very difficult for me to take away some clip notes. So thank you very much. I'm going to have to sit and figure out, okay, which clips do I want to post? But in the meantime, thank you so much. You are amazing. If people want to connect with you, if people want to get some small business advice or mentorship, how can we connect? So
I have a website, KirstenFlory.com. It's Kirsten. People call me Kirsten all the time. I get it. That's probably the best way. It's the one-stop shop to get a hold of me. Yeah. All my contact information's on there. Yes, I'm on all the socials. I don't post as much as I want to, but yeah. And then my podcast is The Small Business Mindset. Yes. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, and love to hear from you.
And if you guys definitely want to connect with you in person, definitely come out to the conference in Topeka, Kansas, August 16th and 17th. And in the meantime, thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. That is this week's episode on Behind the Spotlight podcast. Hey, do me a favor. If you found value in this episode, I love to hear your thoughts on your key takeaways. So please take a moment to share your feedback by simply leaving a review for this episode. This show can grow to bigger heights with the support of you. It takes 2 seconds to write a quick review on Apple or Spotify. Or better yet, how about you just snap a screenshot and share on your social media? Just don't forget to tag me so I can personally connect with you. Your insights might just be what someone else needs. So let's make an impact together.